if the US do completely shit the bed and take this collection of players and have a disastrous World Cup, honestly, that might really forge a love of football in your soul. What deeper relationship can you possibly have to football than frustration and failure?
One of the highlights of every single December for me is being able to welcome back this magical, empathetic, insightful bloke who, after reaching double-digit performances on this show, remains the single greatest friend of the pod. You may know him as the man whose international efforts pushed the magnificent yet threatened Postecoglou to a landslide victory in New Zealand's Bird of the Century contest. A performance so dominant that the threatened breed has now been linked with Real Madrid. He's also the host of HBO's Last Week Tonight, a show that collects Emmys the way Jose Mourinho collects interpersonal conflicts, in that there's just a few more of them every year. And it is a joy to welcome back to a Liverpool diehard. He's been going to Anfield since he was 8 years old, wearing a full kit, I crap you not, under his clothes. True story. Lord, it's good to see you, Mr. John Oliver.
Plus shin pads, Rog. Full kit.
Was it really the play? God, you do not.
Absolutely. Absolutely got all shin pads to that.
Yeah, everyone knows. John Oliver, half measures. No way.
No way. I commit to the bit. Thanks for referencing New Zealand's election as well. Democracy works only, Rog, when American money undermines it. That's what it was.
That's really... Oh, that's just a very... heartening way to begin. What I hope is, and this is the only thing I'm hanging on to, a dose of optimism. By the way, we are talking between tour dates as you travel the US, doing stand-up shows, and before you start your weekend residency at the Beacon Theatre with Seth Meyers. Got to say, I like to think of the two of you, you and Seth, like the Erling Haaland and Jack Grealish of the comedy circuit.
I'm Grealish there, right? I'm Grealish.
I had Myers down as the one who's always banging on about his hair and his Gucci bag.
That is true. I just think emotionally, I'm Grealish. There's a steely determination to Seth, which I think is basically Norwegian, just in a slightly different form. I think I am, I was born in Birmingham, so Grealish's eccentricity hits right at the marrow of my bones. We both think scallops are basically potato pancakes.
What's a scallop?
What's a scallop? I remember the first time as an adult ordering a scallop, being presented with something. What is this?
I've heard of one of them. He'd be expecting an encyclopedia to be then handed to him.
I don't know what that means.
But to the football, let's start, as we usually do, with your pride and joy Liverpool Football Club. And I'm old enough, John, to remember what felt like a terrifyingly chaotic off-season. Crazy Bobby Firmino announced at the end of March he was taking his 10,000-watt veneers elsewhere. The legendary James Milner, a man you once described as Liverpool's equivalent of Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, their bass player who always kept the music moving, also said his goodbyes. Team captain and once moral epicenter Jordan Henderson shocked everyone in August. His decision to go to the Saudi Pro League, where he could play in front of literally tens of people. Dude claimed he was doing it for football reasons, and he was not alone. Defensive shield Fabinho joined him in Saudi Arabia. The club pressed that emergency button for instant midfield rebuild. World Cup winning Ginge Alexis McAllister, already been prized from Brighton. The one-man Scrabble triple world score orgasm. Szoboszlai joined in from RB Leipzig. And there was a lot of shock that the heart had been ripped out of the team you knew and loved. Take us back to John Oliver, the pre-season tumult. What was the talk like in your Elvis Costello feud Liverpool matchday WhatsApp chat going into this season after all that panic and flux?
I think everybody knew it was time for a renovation, right? It felt like we were living with a very dated kitchen of a midfield and it was probably going to need to be ripped out. But to actually decide to renovate the whole thing that fast didn't feel like a great idea. Things were not great. I think it became clear during last season that we were long overdue and had left it too late. But to do it so fast in one go really shouldn't work.
You're like new appliances too, really?
Yeah. Well, it feels like one of those home improvement programs where they come in and say, okay, we're going to completely change this house in 2 days. Think, you are going to paper over the cracks. Not, you're going to skip over the electrics and we're going to be left with a disaster once your production trucks have moved. But it seems, amazingly, to have actually worked. I think, again, they've been very clever. Szoboszlai not only is beautiful, right, carved out of marble, but you've got to address the Adonis in the room straight away. Beautiful man, but plays beautiful football, runs like a rabbit non-stop. McAllister seems to be egoless for a World Cup winner, which doesn't seem like it should be possible. They've got better. Gravenberch seems like he has upside for days. So the midfield is so much better. Having spent a couple of years thinking our midfield's a problem, when's he going to fix the midfield? What's happening with the midfield? And then all of a sudden, getting all your wishes coming at once slightly too quickly. It's incredible the extent to which it's worked this fast. It shouldn't be a model for anybody. I still think it's a terrible idea to completely gut your midfield over a summer. This is the outlier. This is the exception that proves the rule, I think.
I love your description. You make it seem like James Milner's just that old Keurig coffee maker of Premier League footballers that you never...
He'll do a job. He'll do a job. Did you want coffee or not?
It's starting to taste a bit suspiciously tinny, but you persevere.
Doesn't taste great, but is it coffee? Yes, it's coffee.
One man who did not leave Liverpool, Mohamed Salah, who is basically, when you think about him, the power stone that the Saudi League would love to snap into its infinity gauntlet. And there were reports that Al Ittihad were willing to pay as much as $250 million for the 31-year-old Egyptian king. And as a neutral, honestly, I was shocked that Liverpool did not bite their arm off. A generational rebuild could have followed. But is there a price you can put on the guaranteed 3 times a season when Mole Lad scores a worldie, rips that shirt off and reveals an 8-pack to the world on a cold Merseyside night?
Carved out of expensive wood, right? His chest has been sanded and then just waxed and polished. It's layer upon layer and you can't skip it. I definitely made my peace with the idea it was leaving.
You had?
I was kind of having to find a way to balance the hypocrisy of not being able to be angry with him like I'm angry with others, which I can't really justify. I think he's so deeply in credit with me in terms of what he's given the city and what he's given that team that it feels like it's not possible for him to disappoint me. But for him not to have gone is something I hugely appreciate. I don't know fully why. I don't know if it's an innate competitiveness that has not yet dimmed. I don't know if there is a moral compass there. It does seem to be. I also don't know the extent to which he's thinking about legacy and that famous advice that Klopp gave Coutinho, saying you can go there, but if you stay, they'll build statues of you. Mo's getting a statue. And the longer he stays, the nicer that statue's going to be. So I don't know why, but I'm massively grateful he stayed. And I do think it was the right thing. Obviously, it was the right thing for Liverpool. I think it's the right thing for him as a human being as well.
It's the right thing for the world. By the way, Liverpool did get a slight bargain on the old varnish that they used on Mo's chest, because it was also the same one that Bobby Firmino used to slap on his teeth. So they got a twofer. But if Mo does leave and take those perfect nipples with him, whether in January, which looks unlikely, or at the end of the season, where will Mo Salah rank among the Liverpool greats, among the players you've seen in your lifetime, John?
He will genuinely, as a kid, you think, you accumulate so many favourite players and you think, well, I've probably maxed out now. My favourite players are probably going to be the players from my childhood because I love them the way that only a child can.
Like whom?
Well, I guess, you run through like Kenny Dalglish, Ian Rush, Peter Beardsley. There's Alan Hansen. Those are the ones that feel like they can stir the childlike passion in you. The players that you love as a kid are generally the players that move you as an adult. And I have to say, Mo is there for me. He's transported back that childish love of, I cannot believe what you make me feel watching you play the way you play. I think that might be why I felt kind of slightly emotionally inoculated from potential disappointment with him leaving.
By the way, I feel moved by what you've just said, because your Mo Salah is my Dwight McNeil. But essentially, you've made peace with that, because it's as if I'm sure there's not posters above your bed right now of Liverpool players like there were when you were a kid, but there is always a hypothetical, a theoretical Mo Salah poster above the Oliver bed.
You say that, although I do have right there. Hold on, let me. Where is he? I've I've got a little Mo here on my desk.
Please let it be a Dwayne McNeil, a little Dwayne McNeil mascot that you're pulling on.
I have a little Mo, and he's playing. He's gone somewhere. But I have a little Mo that I look at on my desk every day, which is a childish thing to do. So yeah, I think that probably is proof positive that he's built a statue in my soul. He's basically infantilized me to the kind of football lover that I was when I was 10 years old.
So just to bring this down to hard facts, essentially the little statue places him just above Divock Origi, but just below Martin Skirtle in your affections.
That's right. That's perfect placement, Rog. That's a surgical strike.
Anyway, one of the many superlative skills Mo has, and I'm 97% sure about this, is he the baldest haired man in football history?
Oof. What exactly are you implying there, Rog?
I don't know. Everyone has imperfection. I know it's a challenging notion for you. Every human has imperfection.
Because those are flowing locks that he's got.
They are. But also, watch when it rains. Rain is truth, John Oliver. Watch when it rains next time. I just think it's absolutely...
Are you saying that the Emperor isn't naked, but he's wearing clothes that will be basically transparent if there's a drizzle? Is that what you're saying? It's a T-shirt, but we're seeing your nipples if it's raining.
Oh my God.
Is that what you're saying?
Oh my, I'm telling you, this is a march of folly for me. This is like me grabbing the third rail, and I don't want to go there. So I'm going to move on because the season, it really moved to a head in the third week at Newcastle. Liverpool down to 10 men after captain Virgil van Dijk sent off, down 1-0 going into the final 10 minutes, and enter, when Bonnie Tyler was holding out for a hero, Darwin Nunez, that Uruguayan god of chaos, came off the bench, scored his first in the 81st minute. Just a powerful strike. He took at full gallop. And his second in the 3rd minute of added time, a tight angle, right-footed drive, half goal, half geometry buster. And Darwin, second season with Liverpool. I've got to ask you this, John. Is he a great player, capable of terrible moments? Or a terrible player capable of transcendent, generational, memory-defining moments of wonder?
I think we don't know. He's impossible to define. I will say the thing that's truly confounding is, and you can't justify this in yourself, any striker who comes for that kind of money anywhere in the world plays under a kind of pressure that is just suffocating. And it feels like the fans are understandably going to turn on you immediately. And I can't quite explain why Liverpool fans didn't do that. There just seems to be something very special and unique about him. The utter mayhem that he represents. Again, he will fail in the traditional sense of missing an obviously great chance, but he will entertain you in the process. You are entertained with Nunez. And so to see him succeed, like at Newcastle, to have Klopp essentially say, I know what this situation demands, chaos, unleash chaos, release the Kraken, then it's great when it works. It's also kind of great when it doesn't. He is such a weird man. I don't know if I've got my head around who he is as a human being. I don't know he has really. Again, he doesn't feel like to have fully matured as a human being or as a player. So I don't know what we've bought. What we have bought is entertainment. That is for sure.
I'm meant to be a horrible person. I'm meant to, root against Darwin Nunez. I cannot root against that human being. There's just some sprite life force which emits that I don't want to ever be vanquished. I like to think of him as a chef who has perfected the art of souffle, but could easily slice his own arm off by accident while making a grilled cheese.
I think that's right.
You told me Darwin was full loco in human form, which I adore.
Yes, I think that's the thing. Look, we've been very lucky as Liverpool fans to have lots of very brilliant cerebral players. There is nothing cerebral about him. I think one of the reasons he's so difficult to defend is he genuinely doesn't know what he's going to do next. It's almost like he would say to a defender, if I knew what was about to happen, I'd tell you and you could try to stop it. But I don't know. And whatever either of us thinks is going to happen is not what I'm about to do.
Yeah, Jurgen Klinsmann is once meant to have said about the art of penalty taking, don't think about it, because if you don't know where the penalty is going, the goalkeeper won't either, which sounds really brilliant until you actually think about it.
He's a little bit like, the basketball player J.R. Smith. He was so erratic. And it was the only time I've ever been watching a game of Madison Square Garden. And I remember he launched up his 5th contested 3 of the game, missed it again. And rather than turning on him, you could hear the crowd just laugh. And it felt like it's impossible to be annoyed with this man because his id is so clearly on display. What are you really angry with? Life in its most distilled form? Because that's what he's giving you. He's alive. He's more alive than you are. Just the infinite possibilities in the world. Oh. Maybe I'll hit the next one. Most people would have doubts appear in their mind. Am I bad at this? I don't think it's even crossed Nunez's mind that he might not be incredible at football. Oh, I wish I had that.
I love that. Darwin Nunez as the Uruguayan J.R. Smith. Shooter's going to shoot.
Shooter's going to shoot.
And very occasionally, it will be on target. God bless you, Mr. Four Loco. Tastes like chemicals and regret and leaves John Oliver with a case of an irregular heartbeat. But Liverpool remained unbeaten into the end of September, travelling to face big Ange Postecoglou and his then high-flying Spurs. Bless. We will talk about Ange in a moment. But another big game, another Liverpool red card. Curtis Jones sent off early.
Not Curtis!
Yes,
not Curtis!
No, he's not that kind of player, John.
He's not that kind of player. Roger, I've said this before. You can't send off a player if they're not that kind of player for a tackle like that.
Yes, I know. By the way, legally,
there should be a little list that the ref has in moments like that saying, is he that kind of player?
Yeah, hang on a minute. Let me just check.
Yeah. Oh, he's not that kind of player. Yellow.
I tell you another player, not that kind of player. Diogo Jota collected 2 yellows just seconds apart, and then you had Liverpool's 9 men hanging on until the most tragic ending this side of my girl, a cruel Yoel Matip own goal in the 96th minute gave Spurs a 2-1 win. And we'll talk about Tottenham in a minute, but the story of the game really was the official story of the season in many ways. A panel later decided Jota shouldn't have got the second yellow, while Luis Diaz was incorrectly ruled offside. His 34th minute goal shouldn't have been disallowed. Lucho became the season's most high-profile victim of the VAR officials who delivered a line which probably sums up England's post-Brexit decline better than any other. Well done, boys. Good process. But Liverpool are not the only team who've been on the receiving end of not just terrible, but completely incorrect calls. I mean, we're getting to the point where we're like, is there any way to fix this? But also, you've got to wonder, at this point, John, who would want to be a referee? The job is kind of the sporting equivalent of volunteering to be a tribute in the Hunger Games.
I think that's the problem, isn't it? It was an amazing moment, that moment in the Tottenham game, because it's so obvious that he's onside, right? And I remember Graham Lasso afterwards, I think it was Graham Lasso, even saying, oh, well, maybe that's just the camera angle. Maybe they just... And you're made to doubt your own eyes because you've all been promised, well, VIR knows, right? It's literally, it's goal line technology. You're either on or you're off. You're made to doubt it. You think, well, I guess maybe that is just the way it's set up. Maybe it's the shadow, the floodlight is casted is making, this must be offside because they can't be that stupid. And to watch a mistake like that, I think long-term, all you can hope for is that it actually becomes helpful because it is such a calamitous mistake. It's such a key moment in such a big game that it really makes you feel like you've got to work backwards from that. You have to be able to stop. One of the reasons I was less annoyed in the Crystal Palace game when they played on for what felt like 2-3 minutes for the penalty, then went backwards. You think, well, there's an argument for that, though. You've got to be able to go backwards. Either you're committing to this decision being right through technology or you're not. But you can't get into a grey area where like, oh, well, there's no way to turn back time now. But there clearly is because you did and you have.
It's honestly, on one hand, I do think in Britain, in fairness to them, they are using a Commodore 64 for their VAR decisions.
You've got to keep it going by just hitting the Z and the X, right? You just got.
Yeah, I mean, we've all been there, but also it's the one bloody thing that makes me feel calm about like the doom talk of AI destroying humanity. They can't even use computers yet to draw straight lines across football fields. I think we're okay. I think we're okay for at least another 20 years.
It was always going to be a bit messy, right? It's probably messier than I thought. I don't think we're going back to no VAR. I understand why people would say this is doing more harm than good right now. We're not going backwards, though. It came here for a reason, especially with goal line technology. It feels like we just need to be clearer or find a way to be clearer over what we want, right? I think we were all raised with kind of level is on, right? So we just need to decide what level means. And does it involve like toenails? I don't think anyone really wants that.
I just want the Sam Altman refereeing every Premier League game. Is that too much to ask? Or not using an Etch-a-Sketch when drawing the line? That would be a start. And we are talking at a time, John, when Liverpool are resplendent atop the Premier League table, coming off back-to-back late show comeback wins against Fulham and at Crystal Palace. Well in, Harvey Elliott, lad. And Liverpool so far taking a league-leading, quite astonishing 18 points from losing positions. Last season, the sagging form, which many actually preferred when Liverpool looked exhausted and at times bereft of ideas, seem to have got their swagger back. Trent even daring to show the world his plumber's crack of derision.
Oh, yeah.
To you, watching week after week, does this team look like those mentality monsters who could always, some would say quite annoyingly, find a way, a will to win? To you, what does a successful season look like for this team as we sit here at the end of December?
Would some say that, Rog? Would some say that it was irritating?
Some would say, I don't know who they are, but some would. This is an objective show. This is hard news. So we take a neutral stance. Some would say yes.
What will constitute success? I think top four, I think it's the same thing as at the start of the season. Top four. I don't think we know yet what the peak of this team is because it's so early because they had a gut renovation over a summer. So I don't think you know what this team is yet. You know, McAllister's playing where he's not really supposed to be playing. I don't think you know what when this midfield beds in, what it really looks like. So, yeah, the upside is, who knows? For the promise that they're showing, they have to be in the Champions League next year. And I think that Tottenham game, to a certain extent, helped them because feeling cheated, genuinely cheated, and you know this, Rog, and you're seeing the upside of that as well. Feeling genuinely cheated forges character in a team. When you're walking away from a game thinking that wasn't right, I remember thinking after that, well, we're definitely beating Spurs at Anfield. There's no way they're not going to do that. And it's the same way with Everton. You think, well, this is not right. You're probably giving them more than 10 points, right? You're probably giving them more points than you're taking away from them. Or basically forging character.
The Premier League knew what they were doing. They winked. If they would have just given us a 3-point deduction, it would have been a death sentence to that team. We would have fallen into a slow burn malaise and just disappeared slowly. Giving us 10, it woke up just the anger, the full anger. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, a very pretty man, but you won't like him when he's angry. Yeah. Everton we'll talk about, but I do want to button Liverpool because I am fascinated by Liverpool fan mentality. You know, there is an itchy finger in football in general. I mean, more than even American sports, or at least in American sports, one of the great inventions of American sports, not the salary cap or rev share or the draft or any of that kind of socialism for rich guys crap that they've embedded into the heart of American sports. It's the concept of a rebuilding year. Fans will, we're in a rebuilding year, and fans will take it. In Premier League, you will not stand for that. There's such an itchy finger to lambast, particularly American owners. And Liverpool have American owners. Fenway Sports Group of Boston Red Sox fame. And last season, social media, obviously the sanest place in the sporting world to venture, there was a lot of FSG, you're destroying me club. Get out of me club. And I'd read it as an Everton fan. I'd be like, oh my God, how I wish FSG would destroy my club like they have yours. And last season was an off one. You came on our show last year and you said, sadly, that you were starting to feel, as a Liverpool fan, as if it was Jude Bellingham or bust.
Yeah.
You said, I don't see what the plan B is for Liverpool.
I didn't.
By the way, the plan B would be mostly a lot of despondent Reddit posts. Bellingham didn't come, but you saw once again. Is that the ultimate joy of football, John, that it constantly teaches us that we know nothing?
Yeah, I guess the thing with Bellingham was it felt like he was a generational talent, as he's proving at Madrid now. And it felt like they had a sniff at a generational talent in a way that you often don't, right? But it felt like because of his history, because of the fact he loved the team, they might be able to thumb the scale and get him there. And you might have someone that you're building statues of years down the line. And so when it became clear that he was going to go to Madrid, that was a kick in the stomach, partly because it felt like I couldn't see what that plan B was. I didn't know that McAllister was going to be able to be as versatile as he was. And I'd never even heard of Szoboszlai. So many Liverpool fans typing into Google, how do you pronounce, and then copy and pasting the name you just read in an article. They're saying, let me just learn how to say this guy's name, and then I'll start to look at his highlights reel. Oh, he does look quite good.
If we do know nothing, by the way, it's the second time you've mentioned statues, and I realise, why do we watch football at the end of the day? You just watch it as a means to end for great sculpture.
That's why that Ronaldo statue was so good. They actually messed up Ronaldo's statue, because a great sculptor isn't capturing necessarily what you're looking at, you're capturing the soul. And that's what that sculptor did.
They smelt a masterpiece.
That's right. They said, this isn't what I'm looking at, this is who you are.
Yes. Let me present to you what you should see when you look in the mirror.
Yes.
A meltdown human agony of self-involved pathos and preening show pony.
Yeah, it's Michelangelo's David for football.
That's David Moyes, mate. Michelangelo's David for football. It's noisy. Before we move on, I do need to mention Luis Diaz again, because in one of the most, at the outset, terrifying stories of the season, turned joyous. Luis' parents were both kidnapped at gunpoint from a gas station in his hometown by a rebel faction in Colombia at the end of October. His mother quickly found, rescued, but for 12 quite unspeakably long days, his father was unaccounted for as the country's president. Members of the military searched for him. And amidst the uncertainty, Diaz, who is a man I've not met, but he must have superhuman reserves of inner strength, came off the bench against Luton Town, scored the goal that saved the point for Liverpool before lifting up his shirt to show the cameras, to show the world the message, freedom for Papa. And on November 9th, Luis Manuel Diaz, released by kidnappers, soon reunited with his family, actually back sitting with Liverpool away fans quite magnificently in a recent game. John, regardless of what happens between now and week 38, is this Liverpool's biggest win of the season?
I mean, it felt inevitable he was going to score. It's easy to say that in hindsight, but it just felt like something much bigger than ambition to win the game was fueling him then. He was going to find the ball, or the ball was going to find it. I say this as someone completely uninterested in the arguments of the fates, but it really felt like there was no way he wasn't going to get a chance. And if he did, there was no way he wasn't going to score it for reasons that you can't really justify when you say them out loud. And yet to see his dad in the crowd, kind of held up by that crowd, was just incredible. Just incredible to watch. It felt like, I think he became a bit of an emotional compass for the team during that time. And to watch Jota run to get his shirt, literally the split second that Jota scored, there was barely a moment in which he celebrated it. It was almost his body was already propelling himself to go get that shirt. That was the point of him scoring, which is strange, isn't it? Because footballers so often are either scoring for the team, the result, or themselves. And it felt like in that moment, that's not what he was doing.
Football is at its best when it transcends football and is really a reflection of the best of humanity, yes, which is a terrible pivot right into the other side of Stanley Park, Everton Football Club, who, despite recent spikes, as we will discuss, glorious moments to be candid, it's really long-term remains shrouded in darkness. Everton, that feeling of eternal gloom, honestly, that makes Mordor look like Miami Beach by comparison, on top of the looming takeover by the quite fantastically brazen Ponzi-esque 777 partners. Everton handed that 10-point deduction for violating the Premier League's financial fair play rules. The biggest points deduction in Premier League history. You'll never sing that. At the time, you told me that the punishment is going to feel more and more absurdly selective the longer they're the only team on the receiving end of one. I've got my fingers crossed you will be able to get safely out of the relegation, fueled by pure spite now. And you were right. Spite is a motivator. I believe one of the greatest motivators in life.
For sure. It's rocket fuel. Fill it up with spite. Drive up to a gas station in New Jersey. Say, I'll take spite, please. Right to the top. I'm gunning it all the way to the West Coast. Spite is a great motivator, and it's a unifier. And I do think that, I know people make fun of the city of Liverpool for having a chip on its shoulder. Those chips have been there for a reason, right? And the problem is moments like this almost validate those chips, where it feels like you are being mistreated. You're being treated differently. You're being looked down on. You're being cheated out of things. And I think it forges character in a team to be the recipient of injustice. And that's definitely what happened to Everton.
God bless. By the way, spite is rocket fuel. Young children watching this, if this is the only thing you take as a moral lesson from this conversation between us two adults who've seen a few things, honestly, and if we translate that through into Latin, and I'm sure there's a few Latin scholars listening, spite is rocket fuel should be on the next Everton badge, the iteration when we move into the new stadium.
It's a quintessentially British fuel, though, isn't it? Because I think Americans, they run through too many other pleasant human emotions before they'd even consider spite. Your fuel is supposed to be your optimism, your drive. You sense that the world is your oyster. You're not raised that way in Britain. The thing to make you drive you above what you're possible of has to be spite. It has to be a negative emotion.
When you look at it, they used to have an empire. Then they had the Queen, dead, sadly. Downton Abbey, no longer on television. We got the Premier League. When the oil fields off Scotland are long drained, spite may be the last great British industry. I think we do have infinite, endless natural reserves.
The Saudis got oil, we've got spite. You can drill right down into that, into the bedrock.
Let's roll up our sleeves and see which lasts longer. But, I am fascinated. We have had 3 straight shutouts, some of the most delirious football I've honestly witnessed in a long, long time since we're actually a good team in the 80s, a little bit of the David Moyes era, but the collective football, the shared joy, the passion between the great fans and the team, and, Sean Bloody Dyche, some prime Jordan Pickford shithousery sprinkled in. John, what's your message to Everton fans reeling at the hammering we've been at the receiving end of at a time when, Manchester City face 115 charges?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? I know there's been talk of an appeal. I hope you don't get those 10 points back because you don't need them.
Take more.
They can fuck themselves for that. It was clearly going to be a question of getting those 10 points back as quickly as possible, faster than anyone thought was likely, and then getting as many points on top of that as basically a way to turn around and say this was not right. And the longer it stays there, as I wrote to you, the harder it is to justify. It's absurd. It's utterly absurd for City to be sitting on that number of charges. And you do Everton dirty like that is incredible.
It is incredible. Can we just, I do feel moved to just acknowledge, thank you, Sean Dyche. Thank you, you proper hard bastard. I want to go out and sculpt something. I mean, I'd probably sculpt a Sean Dyche like they have in Minnesota for Paul Bunyan, a giant Sean Dyche that can sit on the city limits of Liverpool.
He's in the perfect place, Roger, the perfect time. Not the perfect man, not the perfect coach. Churchill, bad prime minister.
Awful man.
When the war came around.
Yes.
Right, exactly. Right place. Right guy at the right time.
Yeah.
Once you get out of this, like Churchill, you've got to get rid of him quickly, but you've got to appreciate what he did.
Do you mean it doesn't work in the long term to have a man who shouts, "Go out there, Abdoulaye Doucouré, show them that Brexit means Brexit"? Doesn't last. You tell me that doesn't work in the long term? What are you saying?
No, he'll get you out of this now because it's the right guy at the right place at the right time. And it's very important for you to change those times.
You mean he's a war prime minister, is what you're saying?
Yes, he's a war prime minister. You never want a war prime minister in peacetime. Let there be peace, Rog. Let there be peace.
We've gone to the mattresses. He's only good when we've gone to the mattresses. But I am going to make a sculpture after we finish this interview of Sean Dyche. I'm going to make it purely out of lard, cigarette ends and an old fart. But in terms of City, that trial date supposedly being set now, fall 2024. A decision by the end of that season, 2025, when Everton, bless them, could be playing Plymouth Argyle away. City's legal representative, I can't believe we know his name, Lord David Panic, a man last seen defending former Prime Minister Boris Johnson over his lockdown rules violations, going from Partygate to Pepgate. John, is this football's grim future that we're all just cheering for our side's super lawyer in court, adding at least one starting barrister to our Premier League fantasy lineups?
I worry that it is. I worry that it is because I have zero faith in this process, right? I don't think, is there anyone that really thinks anything meaningful is going to be done to Man City? And the problem is when it doesn't get done to them, and I do think it's when, not if, that has set a precedent which is going to make things like the 10-point deduction for Everton sting even harder, but that could propel you to a domestic cup, I think. What does that then say?
That's what I'm saying. What does it say? What does it say? Because you're saying they're punting it so far ahead that we won't even remember Everton. Everton will have just fallen so below the waterline. No one will even remember that 10-point deduction. What have we been cheering for? That season when you came 1 point behind them, 2019.
I mean, it won't change it. I mean, they're not going to take it away from them, and it won't change anything. Like, when this injustice finally is solidified, everyone just has to decide what they want from this. Because nothing's going to get taken away from them that really means anything to them. And it's, even if it does, it's not going to mean anything when it's given to others. So they've just got to sort it out. It's a joke. It's the same stupidity of watching what Chelsea did over the summer. And you know that by the letter of the law, he's amortizing his costs, and sure, you can actually do this under financial fair play. But the very fact that you can do this is not reassuring. It's damning. It's absurd. It's ridiculous.
Quick one on Pep Guardiola. He's obviously an incredible manager, an incredible man manager, incredible tactician, incredible winner. Is there a point when you start to question what he's accomplished or question how he's done it? Does that stack of looming FFP violations, does it actually diminish his legacy, or do you separate the art from the artist?
That's a good question, because I think morally it should be the first one, right? It should stain it. It should put a hard asterisk on it. I guess the frustration for me is I'm sure he could have done it another way. I'm sure he didn't need financial steroids for this. The football he creates is so beautiful. He'd do it under more difficult financial circumstances. I've got to believe that. So when you look at the players that City have on their bench and have for the last 10 years, it's ridiculous, right? The whole thing's ridiculous. It is a shame that something so beautiful as the football that City has played is slightly compromised by how they got there. But I guess it shows the sheer beauty of it, the fact that it's even a conversation.
All our teams have asterisks against some of their greatest achievements, John. But let's move on to happier things. Arsenal Football Club, a young side capable of playing the most thrilling football collectively in England, led by Mikel Arteta, so affected by the heartbreak of that team letting their lead slip last season, going from an 8-point lead over City in January to finishing 5 points behind. That he came on to our show, told us he had to look in the mirror and ask himself if he was still the right person to lead the team. What do you make of this Arsenal? You know, when they play well, they've just lost in the Unai Emery Memorial Derby. But when they play as a true collective, 9 different goal scorers.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, this is a man so immersed in the game that he keeps tactical diagrams taped to the walls of his apartment. Also tries to make human connections with the press, with his players, with the media. It's like when you ask Siri to tell you a joke. He's a very wonderful, strange man, Mikel Arteta.
Yeah, he's fantastic. Right, yeah, odd man. I always appreciate oddness in human beings. Plays beautiful football, always had an idea, always had a sense of the culture that he wanted to create. It was why, as we've talked over the years, it was 3 years ago when there was that talk of Arteta out. It was so stupid back then. It was, and I didn't know it was going to be this good, but it was such an inane thing for Arsenal fans to be screaming when it was clear that you had a guy with an idea. And all any football fan can hope for is a guy running their team who has an idea of the kind of football that he wants. It's why it's maddening to me to hear the Ten Hag out. No one wishes more ill on Manchester United than me. I hope everything goes badly for them forever. But they would be crazy to get rid of Ten Hag. The problem is not Ten Hag. When that story came out last week that he lost 50% of the dressing room, that's the very, very easy way to decide which half of your dressing room needs to go. Who are you going to back here? It should be him, not the 50% of arseholes led by Bruno Fernandes that you are turning to, because that will just get you a repeat version of what you've been going through for the last 10 years. Again, I hope they make the bad decision. I wish nothing but ill upon Old Trafford.
I was blown away, by the way. He's still got 50% of the dressing room. It's a testament to his greatness as a manager.
I was gutted when they got it, because it felt like, oh man, I've been really enjoying this and I think it's over. I mean, if they turn him away.
David Moyes must have read that headline and be like, I've only had like 5 to 7% for the past couple of years at West Ham and I'm doing okay. You know, by the way, can I ask you, is Arteta always doomed to be a tragic hero like Brutus and Julius Caesar? Can Liverpool hold on Or is this the movie we've seen so many times before? City just rising up to rip off a 15-game win streak after Christmas. The title chase becomes just a
Oh, yeah.
lukewarm bath filled with strangely dirty water.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think everyone expects it, right? Is there any Liverpool or Arsenal fan that doesn't expect Man City to put a run together? I don't think there's anyone.
Spoiler alert, darkness. But let's finish the Premier League with just a joyous story for me. 5 miles away from Arsenal, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, Big Ange Postecoglou, a revelation. Spurs manager / CEO of Feel Good Inc., buccaneering football, embracing empathy and humanity that can vanish from this sport faster than you can say Gianni Infantino. Injuries have done him in. Team has shown a propensity, yes, to throw away leads. But John, when you say things like we sometimes lose sight of what sport's about, It's not about winning or losing. It's about connections. It connects people, cities, countries. It connects parents to their children. What have you made of this man? Is he too beautiful to live in our cruel football world?
I mean, yes, which is why it's so inspiring that he's still alive, that he's not been snuffed out by that club's ownership. Again, he's doing it despite the ownership, not thanks to them. So, yeah, I mean, what a massive addition to the Premier League, Big Ange is.
What do you make of him? He's like a big Australian Robin Williams in Dead Poets Society, isn't he?
Yeah, great in a press conference. You love to see it. And you kind of see why players would want to play for him. Like, the football he wants to play is beautiful. It's what, again, going back to how we grew up, it's what you kind of associated Tottenham with. There was this idea that there was a Tottenham way of playing football that it felt like had completely gone. And the nail in that coffin was the time Mourinho was there. Because it felt like he was the absolute antithesis of what Tottenham was supposed to represent optically as a football experience. And Big Ange, he's done it so fast. To have that kind of straight-talking, sweet Australian man come in and have Harry Kane taken away from him and to maybe forge the character of a team in the wake of that, it's fantastic.
He's managing all as a conversation with his late dad, Jimmy. Like, he's living it out with this all. It's just all, Dad loved entertaining football. Dad loved giving it all. Dad loved going into a bar fight and just taking the swings. It's amazing to watch humanly in a football world where the human is.
Yes, definitely. And that's what's so incredible, right? Tough ownership for Tottenham. Hard to see the future there. Like, relatively, I've not been there, but it seems like a relatively sterile stadium at first. And now he's really brought that whole thing to life. He's making his own way. That, again, they should hang on to him forever.
Long live Club Ange. And I've got to say, football can be a mirror of the world, which I always thought was a great thing. But as the world gets uglier, so does football. And the last time we were on the show, we tried to unpack, we tried to fathom all of our conflicting emotions about even watching, let alone trying to enjoy last December's World Cup in Qatar. We talked a lot about how we hoped that change would occur. I think my favourite line about the whole World Cup was yours, John, when you called Ronaldo the Qatar World Cup of human beings.
That's dating. Okay, that comment.
Yes. I mean, if anything, it's gotten better. But the second Lionel Messi started to kick a ball on Argentina's march to glory, the world was really in his thrall. And by the end, he was holding the World Cup trophy while wrapped in a gold-trimmed bisht. Alexi Lalas was dancing around in Qatari garb. And really, the only outrage the World Cup managed was aimed at the self-promotional arsehole Salt Bay. Cue Saudi Arabia having the decks rigged to become the sole bidder for World Cup 2034. How are we as football fans, John, meant to handle these feelings of being powerless at this point to prevent it? What stage of grief are you at? Is it denial or depression, or have you just moved on to acceptance?
I just don't expect anything more from FIFA. The process through which Qatar got the World Cup, what happened in advance of it, during it, and then even after it, the idea that they would come out of that experience and go, that went well. I don't think anyone should ever expect FIFA to do anything other than the worst thing in the worst way with the greatest possible tournament. It's not even shock. It's definitely not shock to realise that Saudi Arabia basically have an open road ahead of them now. It's just something that you've all got to reckon with, isn't it? It's your relationship with FIFA is your relationship to the morally compromised events that they've staged for years. It's not anything new with Qatar. They've been doing this for years. It is historically who they are as an organisation. This is an international criminal cartel to their very bones that produce a beautiful product. That is all it is. And the very fact, like with the Qatar World Cup, some astonishing games there, astonishing final. To me, that spoke nothing to do with what FIFA had done. That spoke to the football's ability to transcend how it was being presented in that moment. So my memory of that is not. I mean, my memory of that will be a little bit Salt Bae, because that really felt like, oh, this is FIFA. But it didn't matter. I kind of laughed at it because my abiding memory is going to be Messi holding that World Cup, which I think any football fan really wanted to happen.
He is remarkable. And you almost predicted beforehand what you wanted to happen in this tournament. You predicted, or you said you'd hoped that Qatar would lose all of their games.
Yeah,
and John,
definitely.
They did.
Yeah.
You asked, please, let Ronaldo play badly, and there is a God, and she don't like Drakkar Noir. You also hoped Messi would play well. He listened.
Yeah.
The now 8-time Ballon d'Or winner is now a world champion, a man whose continued greatness, dominance, has almost exhausted everyone's supply of adjectives. And he was announced as a player of the team he probably dreamt about as a little child into Miami back in July, prompting a nationwide frenzy in stadia, at restaurants, at any supermarket where he stocked up on Lucky Charms. He played 14 games in all competitions on our shore, walking around often, yet still managing to make opposing teams' defenders run into each other. And into Miami, they've already announced that they've sold out of season tickets for the 2024 season. Hottest ticket that really isn't part of the Eras tour. What's it been like for you watching this tiny force of wonder, this demigod of football, live in our midst, eat our pizza, wear jorts while watching his kid play football on our fields?
That first photo of him in a supermarket in Miami was just absolutely mind-blowing.
Was that planned, do you think?
I don't know, but I will say, you can't believe people walking around him. There were people in there that would just walk past him. You can't fathom a world in which he's able to push a shopping trolley around without being mobbed. So to see him there was just very, very confusing. I mean, I think we've probably all got to adjust our expectations for what football retirement looks like. Again, when we were kids, what it meant was you're going to have a footballer who you loved, who had your picture on their wall, and they're going to own a pub.
Yes! Yes!
That's the plan.
The lucky ones, by the way, the lucky ones in Liverpool, the unlucky ones would be in your pub. It would be sitting in the pub you drank at in the corner, angrily.
I think Neil Webb was a postman as well, wasn't he? Neil Webb's basically delivering your mail. But that's the retirement plan. Put in a shift for however many years you can, buy a pub.
That you can run aground within 3 years.
Then it felt like for a while there was a slight shift into kind of football in academies. Oh, I'll coach your kids.
Get back to the game.
That's right. I'll try and hold the game back. Neil Ruddock's footballing academy. I don't want my kid playing like this, Neil. Stop shoulder barging 9-year-olds. I wanted Messi to go back to Barcelona. I think anyone with poetry in their heart wanted him to end his career at the Nou Camp, right? I was even hoping with that Inter Miami deal that they might loan him back just so he could put on that shirt one more time. But I think now we probably all need to accept that retirement is going to look a little difficult. It's not going to be a pub in Toxteth, right? It's going to be a team in Saudi Arabia, or you're going to be playing for the Portland whatevers.
And by the way, players watching this who are thinking about that choice, ask yourself the important legacy question: can you buy Lucky Charms in a Publix in Riyadh? I'm just framing questions for you. But these are incredible times for the game. I mean, Messi, his profile, the white hot global spotlight that he is shining to the game in our nation. The Women's League, NWSL, surging, the Copa America coming over here next summer, the Men's World Cup speeding towards us in 2026.
Yes.
Is it happening, John? Is it?
Oh, it's definitely happening.
Is America becoming a normal footballing nation in our lifetime? What do you see?
This league still feels like a higher version of a retirement league, right? You're going to move, like Messi's coming here as a functional footballer. This isn't the retirement move of old, right? He's playing at a higher level than they've played in the past. still feels like it's over, really, in terms of competitive football for him. What life is like on the other side of the World Cup, that might change. Not just because I think the US is probably going to put on a remarkably good World Cup. I think it's going to have a frighteningly good football team unless they find a way to mess that up. So they could put a run together at the best possible time that I think might then change everything in the wake of it. But yeah, in the sense of, is it happening? It's definitely happening. It's just what's actually going to happen.
Godspeed, my heart soars as you say that, John.
Also, Raj, I will say, if the US do completely shit the bed and take this collection of players and have a disastrous World Cup, honestly, that might really forge a love of football in your soul. What deeper relationship can you possibly have to football than frustration and failure?
Spite, lads, that's the real, the rocket fuel. Spite is the rocket fuel. Oh, God, just imagine post-2026, I don't even like to contemplate your disaster scenario, but just imagine this nation with the gates opened for Neil Ruddock's football academies to open from sea to shining sea. What could we be then?
Neil Ruddock's San Diego Soccer Academy.
Yeah. Lads, today I'm going to teach you what it feels like to be kicked in the nuts.
I'm going to teach you what row Z means, and it's Z. It's somewhere they can't score from. Hoof.
When you're in a fight in the pool hall, only the amateurs try and fight with the cues. The guys who know pick up the balls and let them fly, all right?
It's always the balls. It's always the balls. It takes too long to bring the cue back. Anyway, your mom's going to pick you up. She looks angry.
Well, John, last question. There is a line frequently attributed to Vincent van Gogh, the one post-impressionist who might two-foot you after the whistle, who supposedly said, art is to console those who are broken by life. And we both know that football, when it's at its best, as we've talked about in parts today, at its most pure, at its most Bukayo Saka levels, can do the same. And honestly, so many of us rely on it as a touching point with sanity at the moment. This has been a horrific year, one filled with personal challenges, darkness on a global scale. But John, is there one footballing moment that you have from on or off the field that made you forget about a world that sometimes feels like it's crumbling around us, that like a distraction from literally everything else? Take us there. Tell us, if one exists, how you experienced it.
As absurd as it is to say, football means more to me when it shouldn't than when it should. Even though you wouldn't for a second claim that it mattered at all, it definitely matters to you elementally as a human being because, like you say, it can forge a sense of togetherness at a time when it feels like we're fractured. And it can give you a sense of structure in times that feel broken. So to actually answer your question would be the fact, when Liverpool won the league during COVID, there was absolutely no reason to think that mattered at all. Death count is spiking. On a personal level, like I'm stuck at home, separated from my staff, with kids that don't understand what's happening, and I'm hoping for as long as possible to keep that the case. It feels like the world's falling apart and it's bringing out the worst in us, not the best of us. And I can't really rationalise why it meant so much to watch Liverpool win the league in front of nobody, other than the fact that it meant I could call my dad and say that we won the league. And it's utterly ridiculous, but it's true that in times of darkness, any source of light should be cherished.
I mean, the working out why that is, it's probably best not to try and work it out. It's probably all the more powerful because it's emotional, deeply emotional, and deeply inarticulate. But yeah, I think you've just answered the question I've been going backwards and forwards with. Yes, my own dad is grappling with so many bloody challenges and football. Just talking about football, talking about Everton winning games, which I didn't think that you had the title. I did winning games is it for me. I didn't think he'd see a home win again in his lifetime. Wrexham, Paul Mullin goal just thrills him. Ultimately, you're answering the question: is football a worthy escape from the darkness or intentional repression? And it can be both.
Definitely, little of column A, little of column B. But I think anything that forges a connection in a time of difficulty isn't something that should be taken lightly, despite the fact you fully have to acknowledge football doesn't mean much, except for when it feels like it means everything.
John Oliver, you are an incredible human being. To you, to your family, begrudgingly to your club. Thank you.
Fuck those 10 points, Rog.
Take more.
100 10 points back for those 10 points you took.
We're getting the Champions League, baby.
Not 100. You're not going to get 100. Don't worry about that.
Courage. Listen to the full version of this podcast and all our podcasts wherever you get your pods. But first, subscribe here for more Men in Blazers videos. And courage.